Ayo gang, so we diving straight into this video today about this serial killer over in the UK, bro. She's nuts. Yo, I saw this on Instagram and I was just like, what? I showed my coworkers and everything. It was just, I was just mind blown by it. In the space of a year, this girl has deleted more than six lives, and no, 7, and tried to delete 6, something along those lines. Yo, you're gonna see. But before we get into the video, remember, you gotta like, you gotta subscribe, you gotta share, please and thank you, in order to help me get monetized so that I can then create more how to original content for you and for anyone who's into art. You know, I draw, I paint, I do Adobe products. I'm an Adobe ambassador. I have a lot of tips, tricks, and insider knowledge that I could share with you. But once again, you gotta subscribe. All right, guys.
Lucy Letby, a nurse in the UK, will spend the rest of her life in prison for murdering 7 babies and trying to kill 6 others.
7, bro.
We talk with the attorney who represents 2 of the families in this unimaginable tragedy.
So basically, guys, her name is Lucy Letby, and her job was to care for prenatal babies over in the UK. And like, as you know, prenatal babies are the ones that are like pretty defenseless, can't do nothing for themselves at all. And here comes this person who was trusted to be like the caretaker to help them out, who is snuffing them out of this world before they even have a chance, bro. It's not even like normal babies that have a fighting chance. These prenatal babies are already at a disadvantage, bro. Like, that's the sad part about it, bro. It's just so crazy. And like the judge who was presiding over her case, he said that this was like borderline sadism, and because of that, I believe he gave her the maximum penalty under UK law, which is life in prison without the possibility of parole. I don't think they do the death penalty. So let's just continue watching what it is that they got to say here.
A jury found Letby guilty of killing 7 premature babies and trying to kill 6 others by injecting the sick babies' IV lines with air, poisoning some with insulin, and force-feeding others with milk.
What?
This happened, according to testimony, over the course of a year from June 2015 to June of 2016. Letby spoke to police back in 2018.
They told me that there had been a lot more deaths and that I've been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
The jury deliberated for 22 days before reaching a verdict. Here's Cheshire Police Detective Chief Inspector.
Yo, that's crazy. That's the name of my company, yo, Cheshire Workroom.
Nicola Evans, following the verdict.
This has been a long and emotional journey for all of the families.
Yeah, for sure.
In this case. I speak on behalf of the entire prosecution team when I say that all of their babies will forever be in our hearts.
Hearts.
I would like to thank all of the families in this case.
That's real sad,
their
though.
Exceptional resilience.
That's real sad.
Throughout this entire investigation.
Now they need to lock her
Police
away.
Collected writings from Letby. One said, "Hate and I am evil. I did this."
Oh, I killed them.
After killing the babies, testimony revealed Letby sometimes cried and even made keepsakes for the parents.
What?
And dressed the babies for their funerals.
What?
The impact of this on the parents of the babies is
Gang, now that's crazy, bro. The person who deleted your child is also the person who dressed them for their funeral and helped console you. Nah, bro, she crazy, bro. What?
almost indescribable.
What?
Sentencing remarks to the court said Letby specifically targeted twins and triplets, and that her actions were premeditated, and that she harmed the babies when other staff were on breaks. Then the statement says she would often stalk the families afterward on Facebook, searching their profiles. Letby refused to attend her sentencing for the crimes, and under UK law, there was really nothing the judge could do about it. He could not force her to attend or send a feed of the hearing into her cell. The judge who
so that's crazy. So she don't get to hear nothing that the family has to say. She don't get to face the trial after all that. Nah, bro. Where the justice then? She get locked up. Nah, bro. And so it's almost like she just get removed from society and don't have to face nothing she did.
Presided over Lucy Letby's case, Mr. Justice Goss had some harsh words for her. Take a listen.
But she don't get to hear this.
A deep malevolence.
Hold on, let me repeat it. But before, she don't get to hear none of it. So what's the point? What's the point? You feel me?
Presided over Lucy Letby's case, Mr. Justice Goss had some harsh words for her. Take a listen.
There was a deep malevolence bordering on sadism in your actions. During the course of this trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for your wrongdoing and sought to attribute some fault to others. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors.
Joining me to discuss this horrific, and I can't emphasize that enough, horrific case is Richard Scorer. He represents two families who had 3 children who were murdered by this nurse. Richard, welcome to Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us.
I mean,
good afternoon.
First of all, how are...
That means she took 2 kids from at least one of these families, bro.
The families doing, your clients?
Well, it's obviously an utterly appalling and harrowing case, and I don't think parents who've lost children ever recover from that. And some of the detail of the impact on their lives was set out in the victim impact statements that were read in court, and I don't think I can really improve on those. Those did describe very powerfully the utter devastation caused by these murders and the appalling crimes of Lucy Letby. And I think those statements, in a sense, say everything that can be said about the impact on the families, or everything that they would want to say publicly, and obviously said in the sentencing hearing. But I think also it's important to understand that there remain many unanswered questions about this. We obviously know now through the criminal case that Letby was guilty of these crimes. That's been proved beyond reasonable doubt. But there are a whole series of further questions, particularly around the actions of hospital management, and particularly the sense that hospital management was driven by reputational protection of the hospital rather than by patient safety. And I think those are the questions that I think my clients and many others are now obviously focused on trying to get answers to.
And how are you doing that? I've read some stories about how your clients were kind of waved off when they raised concerns. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so after the death of their child, one of the families we represent had some correspondence from Ian Harvey, who was the medical director of the hospital at that time, and the correspondence indicated, although to be honest it was fairly vague, but it indicated that various investigations were being were being conducted, and it actually invited the family to make contact with Mr. Harvey, invited them to phone in and make contact and get more details. They tried to do that. They told us that they tried to do that many times, but they were unable to get any response out of him. He never returned any of their calls, and it never arranged a meeting, although the letters made reference to his wish to have a meeting, but none of that ever materialized. It's important to understand that the families we represent are very, very ordinary people, just normal families. They're not used to negotiating their way through an NHS bureaucracy, a health service bureaucracy, and medical terminology, particularly, in circumstances where they've lost children in very traumatic circumstances. So, the hospital has a responsibility in this situation to reach out and try to help them through this process. And that, unfortunately, I'm afraid, is not what happened. And the sense we get is very much that Harvey was not interested in trying to be candid with them about what was going on, didn't respond to their calls, and they were left very much in the dark about the reality of what had occurred. Now, that was, as we understand it, this was before the police investigation got underway, and I think Mr. Harvey, in his response to the newspaper article overnight, has tried to suggest that he was limited in what he could say because of the police investigation. But this correspondence that they received from him came before the police investigation, as we understand it. And so, and as I say, he was actually, inviting them to get in contact and to get more information. And so, their sense is very much that they were fobbed off. That's how they felt about it. They very much felt that he wasn't interested in engaging with them about what had occurred, and that's consistent with what others have said about his attitude here. And so, we have a situation where families have been through this desperately traumatic loss of a child and were wanting to get some answers. How did this happen? What were the circumstances? And what went wrong? And none of that was really forthcoming in reality. And then, of course, the police investigation took over, and that has lasted a number of years and has resulted in the criminal trial. But we still have this issue around the conduct of hospital managers. Mr. Harvey's one of them and a key figure in this, but there are obviously others as well. And that's why we need the public inquiry, the public investigation into the surrounding circumstances.
Have you filed any type of civil action? Do the families have some recourse that way to get answers as well?
Well, that's a part of it that's been dealt with by one of my colleagues here. But I think there's just to sort of give some context to that, because obviously I'm your American program, and it may or may not be similar in America, but the reality of most civil suits, particularly in circumstances like this where it's obvious that the hospital are going to be found liable, the reality of most civil suits here is that they will end up being settled. Now, I can't sort of say more about where that aspect of it has got to, but I would be surprised in the circumstances that we now know about that ultimately that there won't be settlements of civil suits. I'm sure that there will be. I think that's likely at the very least. But of course, when a civil suit is settled, in a sense, you don't get a day in court. You don't get a proper investigation into the surrounding circumstances and the way in which management conducted themselves and the failures of management and so on. All of that kind of gets ignored in a civil suit, which results in a settlement. There isn't a trial. I know that in America things are a bit different because sometimes you have kind of pre-trial depositions and other legal processes where information can come out ahead of the trial. But in our system, if the civil suit is settled, then or an admission of liability is made, then that wouldn't be a route through which a family can get answers about what has occurred here, what has really occurred here, and the failings of hospital management. That has to come through a public inquiry ordered by the government.
Richard, when you have a child, it's one of the happiest moments of your life. Your clients gave birth to children, and their children were murdered by somebody who was supposed to be caring for them. I can't imagine what that is like, going through something like that and then coming to the realization that this person did what she did. The judge, I think, called her sadistic, Lucy Letby. Have you ever seen anything like this in your practice? A nurse, somebody charged with caring for children, not even children, infants, murdering them?
I've been reflecting on that actually over the course of recent events, and I've done many distressing and harrowing cases over the course of my legal work, particularly around things like child abuse and sometimes child murder, and this is undoubtedly one of the most horrifying cases I've ever come across. And I think when the judge talked about sadism, that's absolutely right. She was murdering children and then purporting to express sympathy to their parents, sort of stalking parents on Facebook, trying to find out more about them, even after she had committed the murders, almost reveling seemingly in their grief. So, it is especially horrifying. And as you say, in circumstances where your child is born into a hospital in a setting where you would expect that a child is going to be safe, obviously first and foremost safe and protected and looked after by specialist nurses who are seen to be very skilled, and in the vast majority of cases are very skilled and very committed to their job. We should when we talk about nurses, we mustn't make the mistake of branding the profession negatively, because most of them are fantastic in what they do. But Letby was obviously something else altogether, and it's just utterly horrifying. There is no, there is no other. Words fail you when you try to kind of conceive of how appalling it is. And so, I think from my perspective as a lawyer, and obviously my perspective is different from that of the parent because I didn't have to live through it. But from my perspective as a lawyer, it's really important. I think the parents share this view that we need to try to do whatever we can to ensure that nothing like this can ever happen in the hospital system again. Mm-hmm. It's obviously always difficult to rule out or eliminate the possibility of things like this happening. But what you want is a system where any concern that's expressed about something of this seriousness is investigated fully and properly and promptly. And we clearly don't have that in the National Health Service in Britain at the moment. There are lots of good things about the National Health Service, but we clearly fail when it comes to the investigation of concerns that are expressed both by patients and clinicians, by doctors within the system. And in this case, we had clinicians expressing serious concerns. It was medical professionals who raised the alarm about this, and then managers who seemingly wanted to brush it under the carpet. I mean, it's as shocking as that. And hospital managers should be concerned first and foremost with patient safety, not with protecting the reputation of their particular hospital. But in this case, it seems that reputational protection, was at the forefront of their mind. And in one of the emails, that was actually what the hospital manager said. So it kind of gave the game away. But we need to make sure that can never happen, or that we do everything we can to reduce the possibility of it happening in the National Health Service in the future.
Has Lucy Letby ever made any type of overture to your clients or any of the other families? Any type of apology? I mean, what has anything like that occurred?
No, not at all. And you may be aware that when we had the sentencing hearing earlier this week, she refused to come into the courtroom to be sentenced by the judge. So that meant that she didn't hear the victim impact statements, on behalf of the families, describing the trauma that they had been through, and she didn't actually directly hear the sentence from the judge, although she would have been informed about that in her prison cell. And that refusal to appear was enormously insulting, actually. And I mean, I've over many years represented many victims of serious crime, and it's really important for justice and accountability that the defendant is present to hear the court hand down the sentence. I mean, some people have sort of expressed skepticism about the importance of this. It's actually really important for victims to have that part of the process, and it's very, very insulting when the defendant refuses to turn up. And we've had a bit of a debate in this country this week about how we need to change the law so that judges have the power to force the defendant to come into the courtroom to hear the verdict, or have the power to require that the sentencing remarks are broadcast into the defendant's cell, or alternatively that other penalties could be applied to a defendant who doesn't attend the sentencing hearing. So, for example, you might have an additional period added onto the sentence, or you might lose prison privileges, or some kind of penalty of that kind. And I think there's a lot of public support for that. Some of my colleagues in the legal profession have expressed skepticism about it, but I personally think it's an important change and one that we need to see.
It's shocking to me that she could actually say, I'm not going to my sentencing. As it's just a due process type of thing. I would think that the judge would be able to force her to, but obviously the laws over there are different.
Yeah, and I don't know what the position is in America, but I mean, certainly here the judge was very clear that he didn't have the power to force her into the courtroom, and he obviously, was very frustrated that he was, having to address an empty dock. But that was the reality of it, and I do think that's something that really needs to change. As I say, it's a really important part of justice and accountability for victims, that when those victim impact statements are read out, that the defendant is there to hear them, and then the defendant is there to hear the sentence and the judge's reasons for it.
So the public inquiry will happen. Where else do you all go from here? I mean, these families will never heal from this. This is going to leave them scarred for the rest of their lives, but at least they will have their other children that they can love and enjoy.
And I think that, as far as that's concerned, I think that, people rarely, if ever, get over the loss of a child. And I can't, I think that the families will deal with that in the ways that they can. And it will be, I'm sure, very, very difficult at times. I think that one of the things that is important, and as a lawyer, I kind of come back to the legal aspects of all of this, is that if we do have this public inquiry, when we're going to have an inquiry, question is just what form it takes. But if we do have an inquiry, and that inquiry will make recommendations, we absolutely need to ensure that those recommendations are actually implemented. And we've been around this track before. We've had lots of public inquiries in Britain over the years. I've been involved in some of them. And in the medical sphere, where there have been failings in the National Health Service, often the inquiries that have happened have made recommendations, and then those recommendations have been left on the shelf and never implemented, which is really, really just desperately poor. I mean, inquiries can be quite an expensive undertaking, and you have the state spending money on inquiries. The inquiry makes a set of recommendations, and then those recommendations are just ignored. And we've had that actually time and time again in the NHS, and within the health service, and previous scandals in the health service, we've had recommendations about whistleblowers and what needs to happen to support them. We've had recommendations about issues to do with hospital management, although I think we need to go further this time. But recommendations have been made in the past and not honoured, and that is something that really needs to change. I get quite frustrated as a lawyer who's worked over the years in quite a number of inquiries that we go through a process, we get all the examination of the evidence, we get recommendations, and then they're just left kind of unimplemented, and it's a really, really poor system.
All right, gang, you got that. You heard what it is that went down with this girl, Lucy Letby. She denied going to her sentencing, so she didn't get to hear what the judge had to say. She didn't get to hear any of the victim statements. And like the lawyer who defended a few of the families said, that's so disrespectful. And the laws in UK, if I got anything to say, I mean, for real, like, that definitely should change. How you gonna commit such an act, right? Or such acts, such cold-hearted acts, and then when it's time to face the music, oh no, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. You took their children, and they can't even look at you and, nah, bro, that's crazy, bro. Let me know down below what you think, comment how you feel about it. I don't know, bro. It's just heartbreaking to me, but I hope you have a good day. Enjoy your day. Make something, draw, paint, read a book, write something, get up and do something, go out and be active. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for liking and subscribing. All right, everybody.